Thank you so much for attending my PowerPoint presentation on how to play Position 4. Soft Support. Position 4, often called Soft Support, is the offlane support role in Dota. Your first few minutes of the match will be spent helping the Position 3 establish a dominant position in the lane through harassment and wave manipulation, as well as boxing with the enemy Position 5 for jungle control. But right after accomplishing that, you can do pretty much whatever the hell you want for the rest of the game. Position 4 has an unprecedented level of individual freedom in the context of a match, giving soft support players some of the most recognizable playstyles in all of Dota. Position 4 players can become teamfight monsters, ganking machines, defensive stone walls, nuke merchants, and everything in between depending on their own individual playstyle and which hero they've chosen. There are professional level Dota players who make a living by picking Pause 4 and becoming a crackhead for 40 minutes straight. Boxy. There are others who perform the Dota equivalent of brain surgery while riding a roller coaster. Crit. And still there are more who commit unspeakable war crimes to gain both an economic and mental advantage over their opponent. 9 class. If you had to pin the position down to a single epithet, Pause 4 players are expected to be the aggressive playmakers of their team, using strong CC or tricky nukes to outplay opponents in the earlier stages of a game. They're the heroes most likely to gank another lane before the 8-minute mark, and they often spend the mid-game close to either the mid or the offlaner to enable their game plan. This long list of implied responsibilities that you are free to shirk at your pleasure also comes with the privilege of getting more farm than a Position 5, meaning that if the mid laner is busy, you will be the first person to swoop in and steal their lane. This higher farm priority also means access to a much larger item pool than a Position 5, so a little bit of item theory is pretty much necessary to play the role effectively. You still won't have anywhere near the same amount of farm as a mid laner, but you'll be doing a lot of the same things and relying on your own built-in kit to make it happen. Now, if you're a new Position 4 player and there's a single responsibility that you really want to master first, it should be learning how to ruin the laning stage for the enemy's safe lane. Because you aren't tied to the creep wave in order to farm it, you can do all sorts of weird wave manipulation as a Pause 4 in order to give the enemy carry a migraine. These can range from the more advanced techniques like dragging the enemy creep wave behind your own tower to let your Position 3 farm it comfortably, or the really stupid shit like intentionally blocking the enemy waves so that the creep waves will crash under his own tier 1. Once you learn how to stay out of creep aggro range, you can also spend a good chunk of the lane just right-clicking the enemy carry, and there's not much they can do about it besides flying out more tangos. And speaking of couriers, you as the Position 4 can also use your extremely valuable time to walk behind the enemy tier 1 and snipe their couriers before they can deliver more regen. As a Position 4, you have the ability to deal more mental damage than any other hero on the entire map, even more so than the mid, because your bullshit is affecting not one, but 2 heroes at the same time. Being able to tilt 40% of the enemy team within the first few minutes of the match is Pause 4 privilege, but that's not the only chance you'll have to be annoying. Your ultimate goal as a soft support is to become a specter in the back of the enemy team's hive mind, constantly making them second guess every move that they make. You need to constantly appear where it is least convenient for their plans, and when they think about ganking, they have to account for you suddenly walking out of the trees with whatever offensive or defensive tools you bring to the table. When you pick Nature's Prophet, they need to worry about ever going anywhere while on low HP, and if you're picking Rubik, they need to be careful about every single spell that they press. Though your list of responsibilities may be short, highly variable, and unknown to the rest of your team, you have the unique privilege to overload the enemy's mental stack at every opportunity. That's why successful Position 4 players can be either brain surgeons or court jesters. Both of them mess with your head. Now, if you're already a Position 4 player, you probably already have one of the avatars listed in the top right, but in case you don't, you actually have a very wide spread of options. The first is something pseudo-intellectual, ideally a philosopher that no one can recognize by their photo alone, or a classical music composer. In this case, we've chosen Bach, I think. Your next option is an image from an old piece of internet media. In this case, we have Homestar Runner, but the Armor Games logo is best in slot, at least in my opinion. And lastly, we have VTuber. If you're gonna go this route, pick one with no boobs or all of them. Between the two support roles, Position 4 heroes generally have a slightly higher mechanical curve than those at Position 5, but that doesn't necessarily make them difficult. When people joke about rolling their head back and forth across a keyboard in order to execute their game plan, they're oftentimes talking about soft supports. but some, like Shadow Demon or Enchantress, can require micro to play as Valve intended. Still, I don't think it's a coincidence that both of those heroes can also just start right-clicking the enemy laners until something good happens. Others, like Tusk and Earth Spirit, can require short bursts of mechanical skill, but don't involve micro unless you refuse to stop buying Helm of the Dominator. Many Pause 4s have what I like to refer to as a kill combo, which is an internal series of abilities that they can use in order to hopefully kill an enemy hero outright. Learning to do this combo with your eyes closed will get you 90% of the way to mastering the mechanics of any position 4 hero, though the mental skills you'll need to develop will be more difficult in the long run. Now, despite what I've often said about position 4s being attention whores and stoners, one of the most important gameplay skills they can develop is becoming the unseen hand of their team. They want to stay just outside of the spotlight in order for the enemy team to forget about them, and then they want to deliver a very rude reminder in the middle of a very important team fight. You're going to be spending a lot of your time ganking, so it's going to be to your benefit to not be the number one thing the enemy team is thinking about. You want to wait for them to attempt a cheeky dive only for you to TP into the trees and turn their double kill into yours. You can spend a good chunk of your mid game just hanging around with a hero on your team that has solo kill potential, like an Ember Spirit or a Storm. That way, when the enemy team decides to come and mess with them, you can pop out of the trees and reveal that they were actually being preemptively ganked. You don't require an amazing understanding of the enemy's vision game, but just having the patience to sit in trees for a while and wait to see what happens can oftentimes go a long way. Another skill you'll need to develop is how to steal cookies out of the jar while your team is leaving waves unattended. As a position 4, you have a little bit of farm priority and you'll be expected to pick up some items. But if you play as passive as a position 5, you'll never be able to afford that Scythe of Vice you dreamed of at the draft screen. Recognizing opportunities for you to take over your mid laner's lane, TP away from your team in order to last in under a tower, or steal a wisdom rune is going to go a long way towards helping you reach those milestones. Worst case scenario, you can just ping out how far away you are from arcane boots and then steal a range creep from right in front of your offlaner. Lastly, it's very important for you to recognize what gimmick your hero has that you'll need to learn to execute. Earlier, I talked about heroes with internal kill combos, but I think it's important to recognize the sort of vibe game state that any given Pause 4 is attempting to induce. Dark Willow, for example, wants to turn every teamfight into a clown fiesta, sending the enemy team running away while solo killing their position 1. Snapfire wants enemy teams to overextend and then punish them using her very long-range ultimate. And Rubik wants to counter-initiate by forcing enemy heroes to use their most powerful spells and then using them against them. You'll need to identify these gimmicks on a hero-by-hero basis, but usually position 4s have some weird way of interacting with team fights, so start there and then work your way backwards. On the bright side, the Pause 4 learning process is actually quite gentle, because no one else on your team will have any idea what you're supposed to be doing in the first place. A lot of new people have signed up for the Patreon during this series, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for your support. Your financial support helps me continue to make videos every weekday, and I couldn't do it without you. The link is in the description if you'd like to hop on the bandwagon, and if you're already a patron, thank you very much for your continued support. Now, at the end of the previous slide, I said that no one on your team would have any idea what you're supposed to be doing, and that was funny, but it wasn't a joke. The list of potential responsibilities for a position 4 is quite long, but there's just sort of a community-wide agreement that they can choose to ignore any that they don't particularly want to do. You could gank mid relentlessly in order to set up your position 2 for an amazing mid game, or you could stay glued to your Pause 3, continuing to harass the enemy safe laner for the first full 10 minutes. You can team up with your Pause 5 and stack defensive items in order to turn your cores into unkillable glaciers. Or you could go Hand of Midas into Dagon. The result of this is that you are going to have the least pressure put on you of pretty much any role, though if you do feed hard enough, people will begin to notice. It's overwhelmingly rare for a team to unanimously pin the blame on their position 4 as to why they lost, and this is a position where you can pick heroes like Tusk and Winter Wyvern. You're going to have a little bit more downtime than most other roles, giving you plenty of time to think about your next move or which item to save up for. Use this to your advantage, but know that even if you make the wrong decision, no one will care. Now, in the early game, the number one most important thing to learn is how to trade effectively. At the basic level, you can think of this as dealing more damage to the position 5 than they can deal to you, but in my opinion, I think it goes a lot deeper than that. You might trade down on HP, but if you're able to force the position 5 back under their tower so they can go cry to their carry about it, that's a vital few seconds that you can use to unblock the medium camp. In the same vein, your offlaner will be very thankful if you need to use a little bit of your HP in order to body block the safe camp for one more vital minute. As for actually engaging in fisticuffs with the enemy position 5, I can't give a whole lot of advice because it is so matchup specific. All I can say is if they've applied an attack speed slow to you, it's probably better to run away or juke through the trees until it wears off. And for the love of God, buy infused raindrops. Now, in the Position 3 guide, I talked about how important it was to understand your own limits. But as a Position 4, it's actually more important to understand your enemies. Tower dives are going to be a frequent occurrence in the early and mid game, and you need to understand how long your teammates can last in order for you to TP in and save the day. Sometimes it's worth burning your TP in order to arrive at the last second and get some sweet AoE XP as the enemy mid laner dashes himself against the rocks. But other times it's better to cut your losses and just watch as your Position 5 dies a horrible death, even if they wind up pinging you afterwards. Understanding the durability of both your teammates and your enemy is always important for heroes with internal combos, especially when you have to pick between leeching XP from the mid laner or TPing in to steal a kill. And finally, as a Position 4, you're going to be rotating a lot in the early game, so being able to communicate and call the shots early on is going to be a big advantage. This is the position that probably benefits the most from having access to voice chat, since you can communicate while also setting up your own spells. Informing your safe lane that you're about to go through the portal and pay a little trip to the enemy offlaner is going to let them set up for your arrival, making the kill way more likely. Having voice chat will also allow you to inform your fellow support about the Night Stalker headed your way at Mach speed about to kill the both of you. Though in some situations, it may actually be strategic not to tell them and let them find out the hard way. After all, if a bear is chasing you and a friend in the forest, you don't actually have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun your friend. Now, if all of this sounds appealing to you, or you're the kind of guy who has to smoke weed before going to the gas station, here's a couple of heroes to get you started playing Position 4. First is Snapfire, who's one of my all-time favorite heroes and one who I highly recommend thanks to their unique contributions to teamfights. Scattershot is an amazing magical nuke that will ensure you win pretty much every single trade in the lane, and every offlaner can benefit from the instant movement and stun of Snapfire Cookie. Mortimer's Kisses is a hilarious ultimate that gives you a built-in excuse to steal kills, and Little Shredder provides a shocking amount of utility both when it comes to jungle management and making undying players cry. Now, if you're a Position 5 player, you'll be glad to know that a lot of the more aggressive picks for that role can also transition just as well to the offlane. Shadow Shaman is one such example, having access to one of the longest chain stuns in the entire game with both Hex and Shackles. Mass Serpent Ward will allow you to convert successful teamfights into taking objectives, and why the fuck do you do so much right-click damage? Lion has some of the best of both worlds from the two previous recommendations, having access to a very long one-on-one chain stun as well as an ultimate that makes it okay to steal kills. There are many Position 5s and Position 1s that absolutely hate to lane against mana drain, and you can use it to shore up any intelligence difficulties your offlaner has. But if you want to play the soft supportist of all soft supports, I can point to no other hero than Rubik. While his lane is kind of boof, he has Spell Steal as his ultimate, giving you access to pretty much all of the enemy team's spells, but better. He requires a massive amount of game knowledge in order to play effectively, and if you choose him, everyone on your team will expect you to play extremely well. He's going to be quite the challenge to learn the Position 4 role as, but hey, if FY could do it, then so can you. I wrote a little bit about the divide between Position 4 play in the pro and pub scene. Feel free to read it if you like. Now, if you're ready to begin your adventure as a Position 4, or you're the type of adult who regularly goes to ice cream parlors alone for no reason, here are some tips and tricks to help you get started. The first is a repeat of a piece of advice I gave in the Position 1 guide, which is to copy the enemy Position 4. Keep an eye on them, and then just sort of emulate whatever macro decisions they decide to make. If they're sticking close to their offlaner in order to maximize gains out of the laning stage, then you should do the same. But if they're suddenly missing from the map and you have a feeling they're headed towards mid, just start walking there preemptively. One of the most frustrating things as a Position 4 is attempting to gank and then it turns out the enemy Position 4 was already there waiting for you the entire time. The enemy soft sup will be flabbergasted, your own team will love you, and you will feel amazing for spanking a gank that hasn't even happened yet. Another important piece of advice is to understand when to transition away from a pause 4 into either a second pause 5 or a pause 2. Because of your freedom to gank and your slightly higher farm priority, there's a real chance you end the laning phase with more gold and levels than your offlaner. If so, the absolute worst thing you can do is spend it all on your team's second Glimmer Cape. If you're playing a hero like Hoodwink, you can save up for a Maelstrom and decide to suddenly become your team's fourth core. And if you first picked Warlock with the intent of playing pause 5 but got shoehorned into 4 because your teammates are duo queuing, you can instead speedrun a Midas and work your way towards Ag's Refresher. On the flip side, there are also going to be games where you have to act as a second Position 5, sacking defensive items for your weak little bitch carry. Being able to recognize those situations is what separates the great pause 4s from the shit ones, who will go Maelstrom on Hoodwink no matter how well the laning stage went. And finally, a tip that goes hand in hand with my earlier comments about communication. While it's totally acceptable and even encouraged to LARP as your team's captain for the first few minutes of the match, you eventually need to know when to shut up. When this happens will change from match to match, but invariably, one of your core heroes will want to snatch the Burger King crown right off of your head and wear it as their own. When this happens, it's important to accept the peaceful transfer of power and allow them to become your team's primary shot caller. There are also going to be games that are just such dog shit that you should probably stop talking for the sake of maintaining your communication score. In conclusion, Position 4 is a creative role, and you should absolutely play it. This is the only position in Dota that allows you to be the irresponsible deadbeat father of your team, telling your offlaner that you're just out to go get a gallon of milk for a few minutes. Little does he know, you will never see each other again. Peace on planet Earth.